not infinite, meaning that at some
I didn't
point,
say
whatever
that.
theory you have has to be infinite. So therefore, their argument goes out the window. So that is vindicating my position, which is an infinite God outside of space and time
Well,
that created
it
all
doesn't
of the
have to
world and all of
be
existence.
infinite, but we did provide an example where it could be
That also,
or just always
also
exist. Which
that
I
also
think
doesn't follow. Even
infinite's
if you
a set.
show,
What does it not
even
follow?
if you can show that what Taco and Amy were saying was that the singularity wasn't infinite, you still haven't made the connection that therefore there must be a God that's infinite that's responsible for everything. How are you making that connection?
Yes,
Well,
I
he means
have.
eternal. He's saying eternal when he says infinite.
Yeah.
He's
Yeah.
using the wrong word.
And I was using it eternal and infinite. He just rejected that, and so that is the opposite of
Well, I
what
didn't reject that. I don't see the difference in the words.
Okay, so the expansion of the universe comes from the singularity. The singularity has always been. I don't understand where the problem is. In fact, I don't understand.
It's always
where
been, so
God
it is
comes in.
infinite.
Yes.
So it is infinite.
And
But no, wait, that's not what Taco said. So you just slammed Taco's argument into the ground. You just slammed
no,
it. That's not what he said.
I'm giving a different argument. I say the singularity from our approach, all we could see is that it always was, and we can't imagine a space-time. There can't
That's
be a
not. That's not a
before.
different argument. It did. The singularity always existed.
Taco, somebody commented in the chat that your video is causing some lagging.
Oh, I can turn it off.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we're lagging a bit. Oh, gee, my little son T-Jump's here. That's great.
And
Wonder what he has to say.
With anything that you were saying, because we don't actually know. It could be there is a multiverse, and thus it wasn't that our local space-time was the beginning. There were other forms of time that we don't just understand. However, from our position right now, it looks like an infinite point in which space and time.
So could there be a God?
There could be. I just don't see any reason for there.
So you don't know. You're admitting you don't know. So I do know. So you should listen to me instead of you saying you don't know. I know.
No, that's wrong. Wait.
We
The
don't
fact
know
that something could be does not mean you don't know. Could we be in the Matrix? Yes. Does that mean I don't know the world is round? No, I can still know the world is round and be wrong. It is possible to be wrong, but still know things. You just don't.
No, I know that. I'm aware of that, but he just admitted his theory is unknowable. He doesn't know it yet.
No,
he doesn't know the theory yet.
I literally
How do you know?
One sec. So I said you can know something without being certain of it. So if Amy could be right, there could be a God.
That's contradictory.
No, it's not. This is basic philosophy. You need to Google basic.
You said you
philosophy.
know it and you don't know it.
No, that's wrong. Stop talking. So this is called fallibilism. It is the consensus view in philosophy. If you don't know it, you're just a dumbass. So yes,
I'm taking a philosophy class right now, dude. I know this.
Stop talking. So fallibilism is the position you can have knowledge without having certainty. So you can know something even though you might be wrong. That's totally fine. Totally fine.
But that's not what they were saying. They're not saying they know it. They're saying they think it looks like. They're not even saying they know for sure. They don't even know. They're saying they looks like.
No,
it.
you're contradicting yourself.
That's not even
stop. You're contradicting the know for sure. That's a contradiction. You don't need to know something for sure to know it. You can know something with probabilistic knowledge. That's the consensus.
So you don't know.
No, that's wrong. Again, your ignorance in philosophy is not my problem. You're just dumb if you don't know this. So you're misusing these terms. That's great. So you need to take more because you're dumb. So you keep misusing this term like you know it, like a dumb Christian, where you say if someone admits you could be wrong, you don't know it. That's because you don't know basic philosophy. You just haven't learned it. You need to actually research. Stop talking. Stop talking, God Defender. Stop.
No. You're not going to talk for 5 years. Talking. Let me speak, bro. You just said you
done. So you keep misusing this term knowledge, like many dumb apologists do, where you claim that if someone says they could be wrong, therefore they can't know. This is wrong. This is you not knowing basic philosophy. Basic philosophy, fallibilism is the position. You can have knowledge without certainty. You don't need 100% certainty to have knowledge. That's not how knowledge works. So your basic ignorance in philosophy doesn't allow you to understand. Amy's correct. There could be a God, but she can still have knowledge of the natural world, that naturalism is true. There is no God. You can still have knowledge of all of those things, even if there's some small percent chance that there might be a God. So you need to go back to your one philosophy course ask the professor what fallibilism is. Can you know something without being certain? Ask him that question, and you might educate yourself a little bit.
I wholeheartedly
Well, I think
agree
for
with
hatred
this.
for God, I think his hatred for God is showing right now. But let me say this: Amy said verbatim that it looks like this, it could be this, it could be that. I don't know. So she didn't say I'm.
We should pull up somebody else.
Oh,
I
hang on a
think.
sec. I do
We
have
just
one
did another
question.
ad hom, dude.
One question for God
Okay.
Defender that I have is
Yes.
that you're so sure it's one God. How can you be sure it's not a goddess or it's multiple deities working together as a group?
Well, that's like another hour-long conversation. We were just talking about the
Then
infinity.
let's do that
and
another day. I think we'll give you maybe 30 seconds or a minute or so to kind of shoot
sure.
results, and
Sure.
then we need
Just
to
ba-
move on to another guest.
Yeah, just based on the pure knowledge that we understand of the universe, if there were multiple gods, they probably wouldn't agree on anything. So we're here, and there's probably one intelligence, one existence, one creator. It's that simple.
But if multiple deities are omniscient, they know everything. Why would they be disagreeing?
Omniscient.
Why
I didn't
would they
claim
not
that.
be just trying to spread the load to get the job
I
done?
didn't
as a
claim
group?
omniscience, though.
Okay, I'm adding that in. All right. Well, yeah, you're right. It's going to be an hour-long conversation, so let's do that in the future.
Sure, no problem.
Thanks for joining us, God Defender.
Thank you, guys. Except T-Jump. Appreciate the conversation.
Come on, man. Let's not be exclusive like that.
All right, take it easy, man. Have a good one.
Let's bring up Andrew O.
I think Andrew had a comment on the last conversation.
Oh, he's
but
hello, Andrew. Welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Glad to be here. Yeah, had a few points earlier, but I wouldn't want to have the conversation in his absence. Unfortunately, the topic had kind of moved on from that particular point with regards to cosmology.
Well, maybe just make the point because we're always interested to know a bit more.
Well, there's kind of a thing that's gone around with the idea of what happened before the Big Bang, and the fact is that describes a boundary point to our ability to extrapolate what may have happened or what is likely to have happened. That's a limitation. So it's not to say that time didn't exist before or how long that dense state may have remained relatively dense. Who knows what the interactions were internal to perhaps a really dense state before an expansion would take place. We don't actually know any of that. So to say that time began only after the expansion that we're aware of that's our ability to measure time that begins then. And that's a statement of our limitation, not the actual concept of time itself.
Yeah, and that's why I mentioned the cosmos, and I think you've summed this up very nicely. That's actually makes it really clear, I think.
Yeah, so by the same manner that he also tried to describe the concept of traversing time, that you can never get to today, the only reason we call it today, or 2024, is because at some arbitrary time when we existed, someone said, yeah, we're starting now.
An arbitrary point on the timeline that
Exactly.
we can observe. Yeah.
Yes, we decided to call it a thing. The same way that you'd ask, what year is it in China? And it doesn't say 2024.
And we're able to measure things thanks to carbon dating because of our knowledge of science and other methods of dating things, because we know about radioactive decay and stuff like that.
Exactly. But all of these things are relative.
Yes, I fully agree with that. That's awesome. It's actually a very helpful perspective. Thank you.
Excellent.
Yeah, it's great. Did you have anything else you wanted to add?
There may have been other ideas that came across, but we can move on to the next member.
Cool. Thank you, Andrew. Really appreciate you joining us. It's good to see him. I know Andrew from other channels here on Discord, so it was a delight to have him on. Hello, Pokey T.
Oh.
Welcome. Thank you for joining us. What's on your mind today? We can't hear you.
Hi.
Oh yeah, can you turn up your volume a bit? It's difficult to hear you.
Yeah, no, I had to turn up my gain.
Perfect. Hello.
Okay, hello. All right. Is God Defender still listening? No, he's not. Okay. I don't know why why it is that you guys felt the need to like make a scientific argument against God. I mean, like, why, why prove the negative? Like, why not just make him prove the positive?
Well, he was bringing up some claims, so we're referring to the tools that we use, that a lot of people use to understand reality. Science seems to provide the best methodology available to us. So, in a
Right.
sense, God Defender is making claims about reality which fall into the realm of science, as far as we can tell.
Right,
So
but
that makes sense. But like, maybe,
sorry.
maybe did you have some point that you wanted
Well,
to
I
put
mean,
forward?
he's I mean, like, God's an anti-concept. Like, there is no referent within reality for God. Like,
Okay.
there's nothing to suggest the existence of God. So I know God. So I mean, I know for a fact that God doesn't exist in the same way that I know unicorns don't exist because I've never seen like a horse with magical powers and a horn on its head. Like, it's
Coming
just
naturally, yeah.
yeah. Well, I mean, just at all. Like, I mean, I have no concept of such a thing outside of fiction, and he has no concept of God outside of what has been suggested to him by someone else. It's just an arbitrary concept that's been put forth.
Well, I
Like,
know what
Indeed.
the precept would say, which is the fact that there could be a 0.001%, unless you could tell me for 100% certainty
I can
there
I
is no
can tell you
unicorns.
I
But
can
that's
tell
the
you
game to
that
play.
I can tell you with 100% certainty that there is no God and that there are no unicorns because there's nothing to suggest that there is, and that's not how concepts work. Like, we don't just make up concepts and make up like suggestions of what exists based on a lack of knowledge. Because like a lack of knowledge about what isn't licensed to just speculate wildly based on nothing about like what might be there, because there's no reason to make a suggestion. There has never been a reason to suggest that there is a God, like, ever. It is a completely arbitrary concept with no basis in reality, with no basis in anything that we can observe to be reality. I mean, there's just nothing there. So like, I don't see why we have to sit here and try and explain what might have been before the Big Bang to this guy, because he's just I mean, all
It's
he's
okay.
yeah.
We are trying to engage with
Yeah.
people here, so that's why we do this.
It
Okay.
was to elucidate the unintelligibility caused by the nonsensical presuppositions and unjustified positions he holds.
Untangle is bullshit.
I mean,
Because he had said something that showed he didn't understand the topic.
sure, it's just like
I think that what
I
we
think it seems to
probably
me that
sorry.
like
I
I'm
think
sorry.
that what we should probably do is try not to focus so much on the other guests. Like, if you had a point that you want to discuss, we're happy to do it. Otherwise, we should move on to our next guest. It's going to be Some Hobo, then Andrew O, and then I see Wise Ape after that.
Well,
Can
I
I
mean,
add one more point
my-
to just, I think I'll give you what you're emotionally looking for. It's because they want to shrug off their burden of proof. And so we have this situation where we say, come on and prove you're God. And ultimately, the best arguments that they have is, well, prove he doesn't exist.
I mean, yeah, but like I guess my assertion is, and all I really have, I guess, the energy to do is state my assertion, but that God is a metaphysical impossibility because, I mean, you know, what is metaphysically true is based on what we can observe to be, you know, is based on what we can observe within reality. Like that's where we get metaphysics from, is through observation of reality, right? And there is nothing within reality to suggest that there is a God, so God doesn't fit in anywhere in any sort of proper metaphysics. And epistemologically, you just cannot form concepts about what is not there. So that's that's a messy version of what I think, but
You're a theological non-cognitivist, right?
Sorry?
Are you
No.
agnostic? Sound
No,
agnostic.
I'm uh, I'm an atheist.
Yeah, Pokey made that very clear by saying there's no gods out there.
I think you should look up agnosticism.
Well,
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate
Thanks,
the time.
Pokey T. It's a pleasure talking with you. Let's bring up some hobo. That's a clever name, I guess.
I guess
Some
that's
hobo.
a fun sentence.
He definitely sounds like he should call himself an agnostic.
I kind of thought he sounded more like he was an atheist.
Some hobo. Yeah, he was an atheist and probably agnostic at the same time. Some hobo, how are you? Thank you for joining us. You've got your microphone muted.
I'm doing good. I also want to say, just based on other parts of the conversation, I do identify as a goat herder because as a kid I did have goats and I would herd them around the yard.
Well, I think they're adorable, so that's kind of cute.
I think that's awesome. We've got an actual goat herder here. This is so cool.
Yes.
A voice of authority. What can you tell us about goat herding that differs from what the Bible tells us?
Well, I mean, I didn't have to fight off lions. They probably did though. They probably, because I looked like historically lions were in the Middle East. They were in Greece even. But
Yeah,
more
be a
dangerous,
sheep.
more dangerous times back then. Things have changed. We've got safety standards now. It's much safer to be a goat herder nowadays.
yes, less lower back pain.
Oh yeah, we've got solutions for some of that. What's on your mind today? What would you like to discuss?
Well, I'm curious. What exactly is the Theist Helpline? Is it a place to discuss God or beliefs in God, or what is your guys' goal with the channel?
Yeah, we like to interact primarily with theists, but the atheists join us too from time to time, like Andrew O just did recently, and the previous guest as well. Because we like to engage on the ideas. Originally, we started this channel with challenging people to try to convince us that a goddess or a god exists, but we found that people bring up other topics as well, so we've kind of more generalized it with the name Theist Helpline. It attracts people, similar to how Darth Dawkins' Atheist Helpline attracts people. And just want to say thank you, Jefferson, for joining us. We really appreciate you being here. He's indicating the back end that he needs to get going. So I just want to give Jefferson Spashcock a chance to. Oh, okay. I was going to give him a chance to say something, but it's okay. So, some hobo. What would you like to discuss? Are you a theist? Are you an atheist? Are you do you have a concern about ethics, or do you have some kind of idea to prove that a god or goddess exists?
I'm a theist. I guess the only point I want to make is that as a theist, I actually think to some extent it's wrong to try to push belief in God on others, which I notice a lot of theists do. Because, like, for me, I just believe in God. Like, my belief in God has very little to do with logic. So it's just something I experience. And I have no idea why some people experience God and others don't. So it's like, I don't see myself in a position to go up to others and be like, you have to believe in God, or else go to hell. Like, I just think that's wrong. And, but
So
one
I
thing,
think that's interesting because there are a lot of people who are trying very hard to save other people is one of the concepts that comes up, particularly in Christianity. Like I've never had a belief in any gods or goddesses. I grew up without these beliefs, and so I so far never had the experience of leaving religion because I've never been part of one. There are people who do deconvert. The Canadian Atheist organization I run, we're not trying to deconvert people, but we're trying to show that, hey, this is a normal thing, that there are people a lot of people in the world who don't believe in any of these deities. So, because I believe that, and I fully agree with you. It's to me, it's going over the top to try to convince people to change. I think that what's better is to kind of make sure, help people to understand there are different options in their lives, and then it's entirely up to them. Because if a person does this without any prompting, and without being coerced or pushed into it, it's more genuine, and it just stays that way. And like what I'm hearing from you is, it sounds like it's a genuine thing to be a theist, and that's fine. And for me, I think as long as people are making the choice entirely on their own on it, it's going to probably have a lot better staying power in the long run as well. Because somebody who's pushed into something may end up having doubts sooner, and then leaving it behind at some point. So it won't be as long lasting if it's not general. Does that kind of make sense to you?
It does, and yeah, I don't see any issue in people trying to deconstruct theist beliefs, because as a theist, I actually try to deconstruct theist beliefs, even my own. For instance, the going to hell thing. Like, I actively try to let people to try to get people to see the uh well, it's very tyrannical belief that, oh, if they don't believe XYZ, they're going to hell. Like, it makes no sense. Because just if we're saying God is good, then we're saying God is just, and part of justice is punishment fits the crime. And it's like, why would do I believe Hitler's being punished by God? Yes. But do I think it's for eternity? No, because that doesn't sound right. Like, maybe he's being punished for 10 million years. I don't know. Um, I guess I just see the whole hell thing as harmful, which is why I'm actively against it, because people feel like I have to. This is another thing I try to deconstruct, that when people say that the Bible is perfect and has no flaws and needs to be uh, read literally, I tell them that they're making the book God. If they're saying it has no flaws, they're making the book God.
Yeah, there's it's a very outdated approach. Before people had a better, at least grasp on psychology in a very meaningful way, like we seem to have today, they used to kind of think, okay, you punish somebody, and then that sends a message to everybody else. You're going to get punished if you do this. It was very basic, very rudimentary, very like a vehicle on square wheels, so to speak. We've come far beyond that, but religious scripture is not updated. People resist that. There are little updates through translation and stuff like that, but it's not to the degree that should be expected. And sometimes they'll add stuff to it, like the New Testament added to Christianity, which unfortunately reinforces a lot of the ideas before it in the Old Testament and fulfill it, rather than changing it and not doing, like, the New Testament doesn't say stop practicing human slavery, for example.
Yes.
It continues to embrace those things, so it is problematic.
Yeah.
There's a toxicity about it that is a problem. So yeah, the punishment doesn't fit the crime, so to speak, and so that's where the injustice of Christianity really shines through. So I think it's perfectly valid to question those things, and the fact that you are open to the challenge of theistic ideas is quite reasonable, and something that should be encouraged, not just exclusively to theism. It should apply to everything, and we see it regularly applied to science. The whole peer review process is about this very thing, questioning ideas and trying to find how situations where where the ideas put forward don't work, and or where they do work, and try to really understand rigorously what is true, what is accurate, what is factual, and what isn't. All of those things. So that's something that I think is missing from religion, and that's why so many of the old ideas keep getting perpetuated and doing so many harms to society. If you're curious about why people are leaving their religions, one of my good friends, Neil the 604 Atheist, covers deconversion stories on his channel. He's got over 400 of these videos now, and he just interviews people one at a time and asks them what their experience was. And one of the things that I learned from that is when people leave, it's usually not an all or nothing proposition for them. For example, they'll stop believing in the God, but they still are worried about going to hell and a fiery afterlife.
Yeah.
It may take them another year or 2 years to get over that, or a month or something. I'm going to put the link to his YouTube channel in the Heathen Hangout chat for you and in our YouTube chat so that you can take a look if you're interested. So.
Yeah, where do I find where's the Heathen channel, or what is it called?
Oh yeah, Heathen Hangout. It's just above Theist Helpline's voice channel here in the Discord thing. So, or I can just tell you, Neil's YouTube channel is Neil the 604 Atheist. If you type that into YouTube, you'll find him right away.
Neil the Sixth Atheist?
Neil the 604 Atheist. 604 is the area code here in BC, Canada, for the telephone system. That's why he uses that. So,
Amy.
yeah. So hopefully this is all helpful to you. Did you have any questions that you think we should answer?
Well, I'm going to ask a question, but I want to tell Amy, hey, I checked out your YouTube channel after I talked with you a couple weeks ago, and I liked it.
Oh, thank you so very much.
I like her channel too.
I like yours too, Randall.
Thanks, Amy. You're on it right now.
Woohoo!
Yeah, so I guess the question I have for you guys is, how do you see consciousness? Because for me, how I define God, a big part of it would be consciousness. And, the fact that we can be conscious of this reality in general, like, does consciousness spawn any curiosity for you guys?
Yeah, consciousness I see as not being the only part of who we are. What I mean is consciousness also needs memory. It needs to have some kind of interaction with the real world. So we've got our senses for that. We can sense sight, we can hear things, we can feel temperatures, we can sense balance, we can, and there's more than six senses. There's all kinds of stuff that we can sense. And then some species, like cows, they can sense magnetic north very fairly easily. And as a goat herder, you might be aware of something like this. I don't know if you've ever seen, I know the cows will do this. They'll all end up facing the same direction in a field because they're kind of in tune. Almost all of them will face the same direction because they're all in tune with magnetic north. I don't know if the sheep do this or the goats do this, but you might know. But being a goat herder, but which I still think is really cool. You're out in nature all the time, and the animals are great. But there's, without memory, for example, and without the ability to interact with the world and sense things, or at least to sense things, consciousness would be pretty useless, I think. Any thoughts on that, Amy?
Yeah, I just wanted to agree with everything Randolph just said, but also I see consciousness as a system of awareness. We have on one side being fully conscious, and on the other side, of course, being unconscious. We have different shades. Sometimes you're kind of, out of it. Maybe you're less conscious than normal. Then you have coffee. Now you're super conscious. Not the supernatural way, but it's something that we at least have a high correlation with animals, and I would be highly interested as well as surprised if there was a conscious being at the beginning of the universe, because it would just go so counterintuitively to what we see as, a complex structure needed for intelligence coming after billions of years of evolution.
Yeah. So would you guys say consciousness
I agree with that, Amy.
Would you say that consciousness is consciousness is similar to, would you say consciousness arises as intelligence grows?
No, intelligence is it depends on consciousness and our memory and our understanding of things, our comprehension of things, and our knowledge. But intelligence would be an emergent property of this. I hope I'm answering your question properly on this. I think I'm going off on tangents now.
But I could also prove that they're different in that we, at least for right now, we have a version of artificial intelligence where we are able to, from my view, intelligence being able to do things like make predictions, but consciousness has the ability to make inaccurate predictions. And so lots of conscious beings that aren't smart as much as, be myself some days.
Yeah, that's fair. All right. Well, thank you guys for the conversation. Like, I enjoyed it. You probably when are you guys gonna meet next?
So we have the schedule on the theisthelpline.com website. We typically meet on the first Sunday of every month.
All right, sweet. Well, I'll see you guys next time.
Thanks very much, and I hope you enjoy Neil's channel as well. It was a pleasure talking to an actual goat herder. I think that is really cool. Thank you very much for joining us. Really do appreciate it.
Take care, guys.
Fun conversation.
Thank you.
So
Yeah,
Andrew O is back. He's got some more he wanted to add, I believe. So Andrew O, if you're there, come
Yeah,
on
and
up.
if anybody would like to come up here as well in a minute, feel free to raise your hand. We'd love to have some theists up here.
Andrew, welcome back. Thank you for joining us again.
Howdy, howdy. Glad to join you all again.
What were the things that you wanted to add? I noticed in the text chat you wanted to add some things.
Oh, that was once again to a previous caller at this point, so I figured I'd just kind of put it in the side chat entirely. But I can read it out here, I guess, basically for those who were around at that point in time, referring back to the.
Yes, please, because a significant portion of our audience do just listen to this show in the background. They're not reading the chats.
Ah, okay. Yes, it was kind of just tied. The previous commentary that I had was with regards to the limitations of the Big Bang to our awareness of what happens before, and that does not make any implication to whether or not time actually did not exist at that point. Only that it was the start of our ability to measure, but doesn't actually describe any true sense of limitation of time. But also the fact that whenever we've talked about things like a singularity, as if it contains all that is.
Andrew, time is just a measure of change.
Yes.
Yeah. That's a gaming reference.
Yeah, we get that. Yeah. But they like to try to think that there's a beginning, per se. So the boundary basically describes that we don't see beyond that. So to say that it began, we don't have access to. But the other thing is that the idea of a singularity as containing all that is within existence is similarly a limitation of ours, because, for instance, the concept of the redshift, as we watch matter basically accelerating away from us at a speed where it's disappearing from view, we similarly can only see so far outwards. We have no idea what's beyond, but technically, by the mere fact that we have observed the redshift, we know that stuff is going beyond our view, which should be humbling to the idea that we have no idea if there is potentially another expansion, some happening elsewhere, or potentially infinite expansions. This could be like an entire turbulent sea of what people like to call a singularity, but I just like to think of it as a collection of stuff expanding. It lends itself to several other hypotheses, but it's highlighted by the fact that we know that things are leaving our view, which should humble us to not assuming that what we see is necessarily all that is, or imagining that our expansion itself is itself infinite, potentially part of a larger group of infinite, but basically just a limitation of what we can observe.
Yeah, the human limitation factor that I mentioned a number of times to a previous guest here. Yeah. But the limits that we come up are not only our own ability to see and feel things and experience things, but also what our tools can do for us and indicate for us is going on. So there are certain things that we can't see because they're too small, we got an electron microscope, electron microscopy. I think people know what I mean. That are amazing tools that give us at least a partial understanding of what's happening at the molecular or atomic level.
Absolutely.
Those technologies do need to get better over time, and there is advancement going on with them. But it is great. Like we had the Hubble telescope for a while that showed us quite a lot, and then we put up a better telescope, the James Webb telescope, and that's showing us even more now. And I look forward to what the future holds once we've exhausted these resources as well.
Yep. And every time we think we've hit the bottom, we find one more floor underneath. Is it turtles all the way? Who knows?
I was just going to say, is that an analogy, almost like the analogy turtles all the way down? Well, thank you, Andrew. It's great to see you here. Thanks for joining us. Really appreciate it. And did you have anything else that you wanted to cover, or?
I was just covering the previous point. I missed the last 2 or 3 minutes of the last caller there, unfortunately, but sticking around to see where things go.
Yeah, he was talking about he was an actual goat herder, which is a cool profession, I think. So it's kind of neat because the goat herders are part of Christian history as well, right? But he was a theist, and he's a theist, and he was talking about how he doesn't really seem to favor the idea of people pushing the religion on other people. And I was saying the same thing as like what I do, the atheism, I don't push it on people. And so I was agreeing with him, basically. He brought up some good perspectives and some interesting questions about consciousness, which I thought was really cool.
Sounds like I missed a few.
Publish this on this is live on YouTube right now, so that will always be there on YouTube, and I'll put the link in the Heathen Hangout chat for you as well.
Excellent, greatly appreciated.
Yeah, we've got a whole history of shows here, so yeah, it's great. Thank you very much.
Remember, folks, turtles are awesome. It's okay if it
Anybody
goes all
wants
the way down.
to join us, feel free to raise your hand. I'm just waiting for someone to pop up here right now. Does anybody have any interesting topics they'd like to chat about while we wait for theists to raise their hand?
I guess it's a slow day today. I recognize quite a few names in the chat from other places, or in our audience from other places. So, yeah, the Taco, you've been having some interesting experience with debates.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Well, it's pre-apologetics, and it is super. Upon reflection, it seems to be true.
You want to try? You want to run us through the arguments a little bit?
Sure. So, I start out with asking a simple question. Do you reject the self-evident truth of our shared naturalistic, atheistic reality that's been revealed to us through both natural and special revelation? Now, naturalistic in that there's apparently no supernatural, atheistic in that you don't see gods on a daily basis or anything like that. Then natural revelation would be your sense data, and then special revelation would be your reason. So I start out with that question. And then I usually, after I bring that up, they start making some strange claims. And they usually point out to thinking that we think the universe came from nothing, which is weird. But it shows their lack of intelligibility outside of the local scale when they ask that question, because they don't understand the Big Bang Theory when they say that. And so
you're asking them a question, and then they turn around and come up with an assumption about atheists.
Almost every time.
Instead of answering your question.
Yeah, almost every time.
Wow.
And then I point out to them how it's not even a coherent question. And the reason that I know they lack intelligibility of the topic is because a question is not coherent. And so I generally point out to them how they borrow from our base naturalistic presuppositions, like I exist and the universe exists. And then if I'm talking to a Christian specifically, oftentimes they'll even hijack space-time and add incoherency to that. Oh, I forgot the additional presupposition, they add God. Anyways, so they add additional incoherency to space-time, and they create this concept called the uniformity of nature, which is insane. I get why they do it, but they apply incoherency to it, and it obfuscates everything outside of local scale from them. So these grand concepts about the universe are unintelligible to them because their base level presuppositions don't allow them to understand what's being said or what they're reading about. So basically, I'll describe this better. So they're basically wearing like rose tinted glasses because of their additional presuppositions and incoherencies that they apply. And so when they receive this information, they view it with these rose tinted glasses, and their brain interprets it this way. And it actually, I'm not sure if it's a cognitive dissonance or what process, but specifically what it'll do is when they're reading this stuff, they're basically applying their own presuppositions to what they're reading about science, and then they're interpreting it under their own presuppositions because of those rose-tinted glasses. It's like if they had rose-tinted glasses glued to them, and that's all they ever knew, right? But, like, they would describe colors and everything differently than us, you know? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Sorry, I was just looking at something there.
Oh,
So no, it's good. It's great that that you're doing this. I've noticed on some of the other Discord channels where a lot of theists hang out that sometimes they've been talking about this presuppositional turnaround that you've been doing, and they think you're not serious, but I know you're serious. You are putting it forward seriously, and I think it's good that you're doing that.
I'm going to write this all out here shortly. I think
can,
this needs to be formalized. This is really good.
Yeah, and let me know if I can help you with that. I'd be happy to. Because that is kind of in my wheelhouse to kind of do these kinds of
I need to write out my script so that as I take my opponent down the railroad, I can drive them full speed into the goalpost.
Quite a few theists I've noticed are comparing what you're doing with Darth Dawkins.
Not the same at all.
Yeah, I know it's not the same. But they seem to
So
want to do
our
that.
fathers of presuppositional apologetics, specifically Bahnsen, was very clear that we have to engage our interlocutors with compassion because they already know the truth. It has been revealed to them through both natural and special revelation. So they already know what's being said to them. You just have to elucidate it to them in a kind and compassionate manner to where you help them to understand that revelation. We've got Joey J.
Yep, I was just going to say, but you beat me to it. Joey J, welcome. Thank you for joining us. How are you today?
I'm doing pretty well. How are you guys doing?
Good. What's on your mind, sir?
I don't know. I just like I used to be an atheist, and then I kind of found God, but at the same, like I feel like rhetorically I've stand on, like but the line of questioning that I'd like to go down today is like the historicity of the Bible, like in terms of archaeology and what is it within the books. Or did I say the Bible? I'm
that's fine. Yeah. Yeah, no, this is your chance to speak on this. So you favor questioning religion and the historicity of the Bible, or did I misunderstand you?
I want to, in terms of showing that there is something there, that like I'm not sure what truth you can make by saying that like these people existed and we have historical proof of it. Like I'm not sure if that would actually prove what they believed, but it showed that they existed back then and they believed. If that makes sense.
Sure. Yeah. No, we know throughout history, people believed all sorts of things. And a lot of the time the beliefs are wrong. Like one example is many people used to believe that the sun revolved around the earth. But later, as scientific understanding of reality improved, that was disproven. So, and I see Babs is here. She's going to be next after you. But it's great to see you, Babs. So, Joey, you mentioned something there. Are you meaning like there's a deity there, like a god or something? That are you convinced of that? And if so, why?
I believe that there is one there. My problem always runs into proving it, and then it feels like the only people who are really hardcore on my side talked to some anti-evolutionists yesterday, which I do not adhere to, but like they hadn't everything that I asked. But upon further reflection, I came up with things to say back. But I don't know. It's just crazy. I feel like I'm having a crisis of faith every day because, what you guys say makes the most sense logically, but one of the things that you run into with theists is that they really base their worldview on logic, and I don't think that you can prove God with logic.
So, first of all, I'm going to say I really appreciate you finding that what we're saying is logical.
Thank you for being intellectually honest. That's awesome.
We try, we try to be, but we're not perfect. Like I was in error earlier in this program. I rejected somebody claiming that Christianity is growing in China, and it turned out I was wrong. Somebody posted an article, credible article from theeconomist.com, and so I reposted that here as well as in the YouTube chat, and I made a note publicly in that conversation that turns out I'm wrong. I stand corrected on it. One of the most important things is that to understand is people can be wrong, and in many cases are. And how people deal with it. Are they willing to correct that when they discover that they're wrong? That is one of the most important things. And there are, I find, a lot of people, atheist communities as well as theist communities, that will not self-correct. And they are, in some cases, even resistant to self-correction. They're resistant to new information. So, and I'm going to give you a reference because you mentioned that you're kind of struggling with some ideas. I just have 2 more points to make here. So, one of the points is that my good friend Neil, the 604 Atheist, he runs a YouTube channel where he interviews people who've left their religions, and each person has a different, unique story, and it's fascinating to listen to because, the different reasons people have for having joined the religion comes up, but also the reasons why they leave the religion. They really get into that. Some of them, it was an easy thing to get out of. Others, it was complicated. They had family pressures and different societal pressures and things. So I'm going to post that in the Heathen Hangout chat, the link to his channel, which is youtube.com/Neil604Atheist. So he's got over 400 of those deconversion stories on his channel. Now, you asked about, you mentioned that you're kind of, my last point, is you're talking about the struggle with believing in this God. Sometimes you have some questions about it. One thing I will throw at you that might help you develop more clarity in it is to consider, why is it just one God? Why is it not a goddess? Why is it not multiple deities working together as a group to spread the load to create the universe?
Can I stop you there? Sorry.
Yeah, please. I'm done. Go ahead.
I don't believe in like one God, like theism, Christianity. I believe that there's a unity in religion.
Okay.
Like recently, like I have a hard time have like little rituals that they do every day, and I have like ADD or something. I can't focus, but like Baha'i, that is like the closest thing that I've been happy with a religion. Maybe Buddhism, but that's even crazier in terms of rituals that they do.
You know, in the early times, the Buddhist, even the Buddhist scriptures support it. There is quite a lot of misogyny, sexism, and whatnot in it. And for a woman to get married, she had to get permission from her father, and these sorts of things. Now, some people will argue that this was a cultural thing. Yeah, I don't deny that. And a lot of religions are based on the cultures they were created in. So, but today I find Buddhists typically don't agree with the sexist aspects. And I think that's a very good thing. I find more sexism in Islam and Christianity still prevails, but at least Buddhism has moved past it. It's still in their ancient scriptures, but they're just not they're just not in favor of it all because I think they see the problems with it, right? So
Yeah,
And if you don't mind, well, it sounded like you wanted to say something.
Oh yeah, I was just saying that the old Theravada scriptures, yeah, the Buddha did have some sexist things to say. Like, they're preventing you from reaching enlightenment, but that's all I've really heard. I haven't heard that to get permission from the father to marry. That's an interesting fact, but yeah, it probably from transition from Theravada to Maha because they had like female bodhisattvas, so it was a lot easier to just dismiss the sexism of the Buddha because he was the Buddha of the time that was needed, not the incarnation of the cosmos. Then,
Well, and can I just bring up a few points, which is that, well, first of all, I'm glad that you are pro-evolution. That tends to be not only a bad thing, but detrimental to our education system. About biblical history, it's some of it is history. It talks about Egypt, but, just because Egypt is a true place doesn't mean that everything that there was a Moses and talking bushes and all this other stuff. You were also two things, and I'll hand it right back over to you. You said that you found God, and so I'd be very interested. I mean, the joke is just standing there. Where was he hiding, or she, or they? And then. Uh, What I would say, because I consider us in kind of a way counter apologists, counter Dawaists, counter whatever version of theism you got, is to invite you back and say, hey, let me tell you, if what the skeptics are saying makes a lot more sense, then come on over here, the water is fine. Just all I would say with that is think about what you liked about religion. Was it the community? Was it meditation, tradition? And maybe you can be the person that leads. You can lead a meditation secular group or whatever, because we need alternatives to religion. I know that was a lot, but
yeah, I didn't really have anything to say second, but I completely forgot that.
sure.
We're
Just wanted to know how you found God.
Oh yeah. Well, it's rather personal. First time in my life, I legitimately.
Sorry, Joey J. Sorry to interrupt. Your audio is breaking up.
How about now?
Okay. Yeah, I guess you moved to another part of the room. It seems to be fine now.
All right. Well, like I said, it's rather personal. I made a personal prayer first. I got an immediate answer. Like, I don't know. I hesitate to even really say stuff like that because you'll just say it's anecdotal. But I don't know. It just makes sense.
So, did you say that your prayer was answered?
Yeah, like that night.
What was
Like
the
in a
prayer?
very like I don't really want to get into it because we're being live streamed. Like I can tell you off
Understandable.
like
That's fine. Yeah, no, we are live streamed on YouTube, and it will be permanent archive. You know, you don't have to share it. Please don't feel pressured. We're not into pressuring people.
yeah, I get it. It would help if I explained exactly what it was, but yeah, I feel like all I need to say is that I got an immediate answer. But
Can I
every
ask
time
just one more?
An immediate answer. That's what you're saying. Yeah, you're still breaking up a bit, but I heard immediate answer is you got an immediate answer is why. And I think that's good enough to just leave it at that. Go ahead, Amy, with your question.
Yeah, then I'll take it in a reverse direction. What would it take to convince you that a God does not exist?
honestly, I'm not. It's scary. I that there's no putting back in the bottle. Like on top of that, like I'm super into like Alan Watts and Ram Dass. So like that new age style of things, and like even that makes something behind. But uh, I don't know. I feel like a standard of evidence that you guys go by. Like you don't go by books because like some of those, to be fair, don't have accurate, but it just comes across as anecdotal to you guys.
Sure. Can I interrupt just to because I have Ricky Gervais in the back of my head who likes to give the story about how you could burn every book right now, and slowly but surely, each and every scientific fact would be re-recorded within these textbooks. And yet, if we were to do the same thing to every religious book, chances are almost none of them would come back exactly the same. And it's because in science, we're peer reviewing, we're doing things more like discovering things, discovering reality.
Yeah. Thing I can say to that is that it wouldn't come back in the exact way, but it really would form. Which, like, if you're talking about the what's the word, the immortality of scientific fact, the idea that a god comes back into the zeitgeist, like it feels like you can use the same argument that not necessarily that true, but there's this uniting force because it comes back again and again. The record history.
I would say it's not a very uniting source, though. I mean, they have factional wars so often that I always find the irony is the atheists end up getting the purity, is that you have these million different people telling us these different gods. They can't all be right. They can't all be wrong.
I guess Baha'is authenticity of religion, like what was told at one time, like that's what they needed to hear. Like for instance, the not having pigs or like other weird rules. But there are universal laws like being believing God that I feel like you find commonality in the religion. Focus on the commonality rather than like, but in terms of a plan of a God, the perfect creating faction states, like that is definitely something you say against God, and I have no idea what God's plan with that.
I do apologize. I feel like I heard 50% of that.
Oh no, I don't know what's the matter with my phone. What? Yeah.
It's unfortunate this does happen sometimes, but I think we are getting the gist of what you're saying.
All right.
And
All right.
like
Well,
I
thank you
said,
for coming up.
oh yeah, no, good Taco.
Oh yeah, I was just saying thank you for coming up. We got another person in queue. So, do you have anything else you'd like to say?
Not really. I just think we're gonna continue to run into the same thing. Me believing, but not being able to prove it. So I can yield the room to everyone come
What
up.
I'll quickly say about that is there are many times in our lives where we will believe things without evidence. And that's a natural thing to do. I think where it becomes a problem is when somebody takes a belief that they don't have evidence for, when they need to make an important decision about something, such as setting a government policy that affects a lot of people. You want to make sure that you have the right information to make certain decisions. See, when we go to watch a movie, like when I go to watch a movie like Lord of the Rings, I will believe just temporarily during the movie, I'll believe what I'm seeing is real so that I can get more entertainment value out of it. So in this respect, that kind of belief is fine. It's good. And when the movie's over, or if it has to end early because of power outage or whatever, I know I know none of it's real, so it's fine. But the problem is when people take things that aren't real. Like we can take a look at the anti-vaxxers, for example, and they will come up with things like, Andrew Wakefield. He was paid by some lawyers, it turns out, to create a false study that, and he admitted all this in court on record under oath, that he was paid to create that false study that claimed that vaccines cause autism. Turns out they don't. There's been mountains and mountains of evidence against that, and there's been nothing actually substantial that proves it. Also, the vaccines come after birth, and autism, it turns out, is usually a genetic thing that a person's born with. So that's one of the biggest debunks of it. But there are people who still believe that and then choose not to get vaccinated. So that would be an example of how their false belief led to bad decisions, because they end up getting sick and dying, or their offspring that they refuse to get a polio vaccine for end up getting polio and things like that. It's just terrible. So, what I would suggest is if it's something really important that calls for an understanding of actual evidence, that's where we need to look at the evidence and make it the priority over the beliefs. But that's
Yeah, like I'll see to science vaccines because that's actually dangerous, and I'm not for force ideas on people, especially in a detrimental way.
Yeah. Coercion is not the best way. Ideas should be taken on their good ideas and facts will stand on their own merits. They don't need to be forced on people. The facts are the facts, regardless of what people believe about them. So yeah. The coercion thing is a problem. Thank you very much, Joey J. I'm sorry you're having audio problems, but feel free to join us again in the future. I hope that you found this to be an interesting conversation.
Yeah, it was. Thank you.
Really pleasure having you on. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you. Demolish Doctrine.
Demolished Doctrine is a friend of mine. Hello, Richard. It is good to hear your voice. It's been a while. Thank you for joining us and welcome. Your microphone is muted right now.
And I don't think he's server muted.
All right. He's probably trying to find the button for turning off the microphone. If you're on a PC, it's probably down near your name by the bottom left corner, or it's along the bottom of the screen. There's a picture of a microphone. In the meantime, Amy, did you have any additional thoughts on what Joey J was saying?
Yeah, just that one of the hardest things, besides maybe the fear of death and hell, is the fact that we have to have alternatives. Community is one of the strongest ones that religion gives. And so, shows like this, channels which focus on community. Those are going to be the alternatives that we have. Even if you just like to bowl and every week it's just hanging out with the people who like to bowl, that is better than giving 10% to the people selling nothing in the sky. I say lovingly to people who sell nothing in the sky. Mwah.
Amy, I think you know Richard Madsen as well.
Hey, yes, I do. Richard is an amazing person. I like our liberal theists or the moderate or whatever the label that people want to say. The sane ones, the people that believe the earth is, billions of years old. Pro-science.
And if anybody in the audience would like to come chat with us, feel free to raise your hand.
Hey, Talk, are you able to check if Demolished Doctrine was server muted?
Oh, he's not. It's
He's
on
not,
his end.
okay.
He just had to hit the unmute button.
Yeah. Okay, Richard, I'm going to just move you back to the audience, and then you can try to rejoin, and maybe your microphone thing will show up. Oh, he did it himself. Okay.
So if anybody would like to come chat with us, feel free to raise your hand.
And I will keep on saying your God doesn't exist to entice people.
Well, I guess Richard's having some audio problems. What we'll do, we'll go on to Ascend, and then we'll try Richard Madsen again after that.
Sounds good.
Ascend, welcome. Thank you for joining us. How are you today?
I'm good. Wonderful to be here. I suppose my kind of questioning and curious about your guys' opinion about and I talked actually on another show about this, but I'd like to hear you guys' opinion about I don't know if this question is appropriate for this Theist Helpline. I'm an agnostic as well, but I'm a Buddhist. So and I don't believe Buddha was a god. So I think he's just a dude who had a really good idea. But that's not the realm of my question. My question is about Christian nationalism and what you guys think about the rising tide of Christian nationalism in America. I don't know if that's appropriate for the show, but I don't know if you guys have any ideas about that.
It's appropriate. That's fine.
And I have an answer to that. This is their last hurrah. They realize that, we've been winning a lot of culture wars. The secularists, liberalists, people who like freedom and don't care about who sleeps with who. And they're starting to see that if they don't make a final grasp for it, that the culture really is going to change. I mean, they win the they haven't won the popular vote in years here. Pews are emptying. PS5, way better seller than the Bible here, as much as they like to give it out for free. And so, yeah.
Well, I don't know how this is appropriate or this is a what can I say? When I did an information search on the Gallup poll about how many people believe in God, inspired by God. So this is a whole spectrum, not just the fundamentalists, but those who believe that the Bible was inspired by God. The last one I ran, it was like 49% of our country in America believe that the Bible is inspired by God. So that's a lot of, I would think, a lot of Christian nationalists, well, potential Christian nationalist audience. But then again, I'm not sure. I'd like to hear what you guys think about that.
Ascend, what do you think about there being a Christian flag? I've encountered a few Christians who think that should be the world flag, representing the entire world. It's a white flag with a crucifix. I think it's in blue on a black background in the top right corner of the flag.
Yeah, I myself, I'm a big history buff, and when I look at the founding fathers, I really don't see them endorsing this type of thinking. That's my one kind of entry into that answer. And then the other entry is because we are of they're trying to employ the enlightenment, kind of the age of enlightenment, age of reason, of how to even create a structure that is a society, and we're the noble experiment that created that they hope that this will burgeon into a kind of society where one religion doesn't rule all religions. I just can't see the founding fathers saying one religion, the Christian religion, rules all religions. Sometimes I
Even
think
now.
that. Go ahead. Go ahead.
We see that from Islam too.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. So yeah, that's a big. So then we'll become a what do you call it? A theocracy, a theocratic country, a theocratic world. And from what I've seen of theocratic operations in the world, they don't impress me.
Well,
They
very
don't?
specifically, our country was founded by deists. Now, there was still, unfortunately, we found this country, that everyone was free while not counting giant majority of the country. However, they were not theists, they were deists. The lay audience, the lay people of this country tend to be from that version of Protestantism, the purity type of culture that has now come to dominate these creationist circles. And so I'm going to keep on putting emphasis. The Christian nationalists are the far right, the people that are definitely the most dangerous version, but I want to focus on just all of creationism. Not good.
Hmm. Hmm. I can see that. I get no argument from me there. Yeah, yeah. Like I remember having a conversation with my mother through this, and when it comes to, and this is kind of the, I'm curious to your guys' opinion about this. When it comes to, I don't know if it's possible even to dissuade um a person who has such a fundamental belief structure. It seems like their belief structure is tied into their identity and how they operate in the world, and even how they frame the world. It's almost as if you take that away, then all of a sudden their whole kind of paradigm fabric breaks down, and bad things, their mind can't handle it, or their life can't handle it. So I don't know how could we even ask someone whose foundational framework for how they view the world be changed.
So part of the problem is that a lot of religious institutions condition their followers to their congregations to look at the religion in a way that's not separate from the individual. So people end up internalizing it quite often to extreme degrees. So any critique of their religion becomes, in their view, an attack on them personally, and that's part of the poison that is being perpetuated by these organizations, and it is a problem. So yeah, you've identified what really is a problem. Christianity does this, Islam does this, and other religions do it too, including polytheistic religions.
The other thing that I would say, you say, how do we change people's minds? I have found a good method being the Socratic method, put simpler, just asking questions very calmly. And what we can try to do is poke at their logistics by using our worldview. Just an example, and you can do this with any religion. When I talk with Muslims who believe that Muhammad cut the moon in half, I just want to know what he was breathing. These types of questions I want asked. I want the same thing when I ask questions to Christians about a body coming back 72 hours after supposing of rot. And so it's just very gently to ask questions about their worldview and see if they can actually defend them.
So one of the answers that I've heard to the what was Muhammad breathing when he split the moon. Actually, two answers. One of them was, oh, he held his breath the whole way. The other one was that there was a lot more oxygen around the Earth at that time, so it wasn't a problem for him. Those are the two answers I've heard.
What?
Seriously. Yeah, I know. It's funny, huh? These are the same people who believe that salt water and fresh water don't mix.
Yes, but so at least you get those type of statements. I want them to say that out loud.
Yeah, it's very rare. I've heard a few people say it. I don't think most Muslims believe that stuff, but they about him holding his breath or that there's oxygen up there. But in fact, I think a lot of them probably haven't even thought about that. So it's good that you raised the question.
No, the number one apologetic I get from both sides. It's a miracle. That's the whole point. It doesn't make sense because it's not supposed to make sense.
Oh, that's common. Yeah.
But yeah, any other point aside?
One more. I've heard. Correct me if I'm wrong. If you heard a similar point, but was stated differently, because I could be wrong. But I remember watching a program with and please don't do a collective groan, but you probably will. Jordan Peterson.
Oh, yes. Dr. Jordan Peterson, I have quite a few issues with him. I've challenged him to a debate because, and I've challenged a number of times, but I think because he's quite famous, I think it just gets lost in with all the different people contacting him. So I've challenged him to debate over what he said about atheists. He said at a debate in Toronto, or a conversation with Matt Dillahunty in Toronto years ago, that, and it's all over YouTube, that he thinks that atheists are all Christians and that we just don't know it. And then when he was asked the question, I think from Matt or from a member of the audience, about what he thinks in that context that a true atheist would be like. And he said it'd be like Raskolnikov from the novel Crime and Punishment, be going around murdering people. And so I do want to challenge him on that because he's wrong. He's just outright wrong about both of those facts that he's putting forward as those ideas that he's putting forward as facts. So yeah, but that's the issue I have with him. There's other things too, but those are the main things that I find objectionable about his views on atheism. What were you going to say about Dr. Peterson?
Actually, you hit the nail on the head. That's exactly what I was going to say. That exact point. And I wanted to hear you guys' point of view, and you already raised it, so that's great.
What are your thoughts on his him saying those things?
Yeah, obviously, well, yeah. Here's the door that I enter. When I think about that, looking at all the various moral systems around the world, religions around the world, moral systems around the world, to say. I mean, there are those that predate Christianity, like Buddhism, for example. And although I don't take I don't take the supernatural claims in Buddhism as to be real. Actually, I go to the earlier teachings. But it's a practice and a way of life, of navigating a way of life without the need of needing a deity to say it so. I mean, his kind of a framework has the individual, test, consider the actions he's done, put those actions put those actions, go execute those actions, and then reflect on those actions. Were they beneficial or harmful? That's pretty much the engine of morality that he likes to navigate, and to do it with a mind that's cultivated, that's calm and clear, and that you try to take reality as it is. That's kind of like a summary. Maybe some things missing, but that's the nugget of it. So when it comes to Confucianism, Buddhism, and various other systems that don't need a god to be a moral system, I find that his need to do that is it doesn't take those other things in consideration. So that's kind of the door I come through. Hopefully that kind of orbits what you're saying. Well, it doesn't have to work, but that's what I'm thinking.
What I really like about these conversations is that we can find a lot of different viewpoints from people. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
And I agree. By the way, I should have added that on. So thank you, Asen, for joining us. Was there a final thing you wanted to say before we move on to our next guest?
No. But thank you very much for allowing me to talk, and this is a wonderful program.
Thank you for
Well, please feel free to join us again, and if you know other people who might find it interesting, we do have a website, www.theisthelpline.com, and you can see our future schedules there. Welcome, Demolished Doctrine, Richard Madsen. It's great to have you here. I hope you can get your microphone sorted out this time.
Woohoo! I wonder, Richard, do you have it push to talk or something? Do you have to push something if you're on a phone, or a key that you have it set?
It's showing his microphone is muted. That's
Yeah.
I use push to talk. It shows the microphone's not muted all the time even when I'm not pushing the button. So I'm pretty sure it's not push to talk for him. I think it's just a mute function.
Well, we'll keep on sending love to Richard, and just a shout out to everyone out there. Come on, raise your hand, because God does not exist.
So I was just going to tell him, but he left. He can probably right click on his own picture, and there'll be an option to turn off the mute function there. Oh, these audio problems. I was really looking forward to talking to him. It's just like everybody who joins.
Yeah, and if anybody would like to come up and chat with us, go ahead and raise your hand. We'd love to have a theist up.
Well, maybe what we should cover come to an end. It looks like it's kind of a quiet day today.
I will say, I have my own counter-apologetic argument that is
yes, let's do that.
Now, it comes from me hating the words, the language begins to exist, which is what I want them to really defend. And so I just have quite simply, everything that exists has a cause 90% of the time. They like that. Premise 2. God exists. And of course, conclusion, everything that exists has a cause. God exists, therefore God has a cause. This is one of my 3 arguments that I use to try and coax out to get them to actually defend their beliefs. Whatever reason, they don't seem to like the conclusion. They're okay with both premises. They just don't like the conclusion.
It's funny how that goes. I think Taco runs into that a little bit as well. I see Richard Madsen is in our YouTube audience. I'm going to just try to have him come back and try one more thing. So did you want to elaborate a little bit on some of the responses you've had in the meantime?
Sure. In fact, if you don't mind, can I just quickly, I got 2 more. I'll just keep on going. This is...
Please do.
If they accept this, because you have to use each conclusion as a new premise. So if they accept that, I can do contingency. Human imagination creates most of the gods on Earth. I find that most theists actually believe this. They just don't think theirs is. Premise 2. Imagination is contingent on the human mind. That's a big one we could talk about, but they seem to be okay with that one normally. Conclusion, human imagination creates most gods on Earth. Imagination's contingent on the human mind. Therefore, most gods on Earth are contingent on the human mind. So at least we've eliminated the vast majority of gods. All we now need to deal with is that one specific god. But oh my goodness, we had so many before.
So basically, without a human mind to perceive the God, what use is the God? It's kind of what's a question to be asked. And a big
Indeed.
elephant in the room, do you think?
I would not only agree, my claim at least, is that these gods are contingent on us. And if our minds and our books were to be destroyed and, the sun going red giant, there goes our gods.
And everything with it.
Everything with it. And so I have my last one. And once again, I oftentimes, if anyone disagrees with any of the premises, I'm okay with that because it has, I would say, a skeptic worldview built into it. And I just want to know what you believe in. And they love explaining what they believe in. They do not love explaining why. But okay, my final one, my anti-specific religion. So we build in our premise. It's logical to assume most gods on earth are contingent on the human mind. We just found that out before. Premise 2, we have no good evidence for the Abrahamic God existing over any other. I assume that's where we're going to have a good conversation. And then conclusion, most gods on earth are contingent on the human mind. We have no good evidence for the Abrahamic God existing over any other. Therefore, it's logical to assume the Abrahamic God is contingent on the human mind. Theus, if you disagree, come on and tell me why my logic is so faulty.
Welcome, that guy. I guess we're going to have
Yeah,
some
sorry,
chat.
you can just call me Guy.
Hey, thanks for joining us. How are you today?
I'm doing well. I was just listening in. Sounded like an interesting conversation. What's it called? Do we have, based off your first premise, does it have to be all about the Abrahamic gods? Because I'm agnostic. I'm not necessarily a theist myself, but the thing that keeps me agnostic rather than atheist is the potential possibility. Like, if everything kind of exists in this universal bubble, and you want to expand in, there could be a potential whatever amount of multiverses. Isn't it possible that we could be like an experiment in a sense? So you try and see what the potential possibility if you run the experiment. And as long as the universes exist, then the God in a sense kind of exists.
I would like to see what your version then of a god is, because is a god what I call the modern version that is this
God
creator
is just
of
a
the universe?
concept to me. God is sounds more like a word. God, if you take it by whatever religion, it's a person's understanding or relationship with it. But at the end of the day, if you're talking like a universal, like, I don't know, truth, then I don't know what God is. I think that's beyond me. It's like a fourth dimensional creature in a sense. It'd be standing beyond everything. What is perfection? We don't know. We're imperfect.
I
Yes,
say that
and it's an adjective. That's why there is no perfect. When they say this is the perfect greatness or the perfect goodness, that is kind of a weird thing because there's no goodness going wom 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 wom. I have other comments, but Randolph, I think,
I don't
wants
really
to say
care about
something.
what
Yeah,
it is.
that guy.
in a sense.
Excuse me, I
Oh,
just
yeah.
want to address something. You're saying we're imperfect beings. The idea that this god or goddess or deities is perfect, but creates imperfect beings, seems like a contradiction to me.
Why so? If it's an experiment to say so, it's like potentialities. We're what's to say we're not just like one offshoot of like a logic tree, and it's just running all
Why?
the potentials, and it's just like, okay, well, shoot, this is our existence.
Why should a perfect being that's omniscient and omnipotent, etc., have a need to run an experiment?
It seems flawed. From my understanding, I've thought about this a bit. It seems flawed from like our understanding because we see time linearly. But if you just see time as like all of existence and then beyond it, then all of this is just its thoughts.
But why would there be a being? That always gets me up. Like, we have agency for a specific reason, evolutionarily speaking. Why does this being exist?
Why does anything exist?
For good reason. So, like, we're here, our agency, this is how our bodies
No, I mean from
collect
like the
food.
very beginning, not like cause and effect, but from the very beginning. Why does everything exist?
We don't know.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
But is that just what you're saying? We don't know?
I'm not God. I'm not this being that's so far beyond, like, yeah.
Sure. And I would say
It's just like
I'm sorry.
that it's the potential of this is the reason why I'm agnostic rather than atheist. And all I'm saying is, based off your first premises of like your original argument, I don't necessarily remember the entire thing. This seems to contradict, and I was wondering what your thoughts might be on this.
Are you agnostic towards the existence of round squares?
Round squares.
Married
What's a
bachelors?
circle? It's a sum of points, right?
Married bachelors, round squares, P and not P at the same time. Are you agnostic on all those things?
I have no clue what any of that means. I'm uneducated. I just listen into different like things from time to
They're
time.
contradictions.
P is a short form for the word proposition.
Sort of, yes. So they're contradictions. They're things that are literal contradictions. So a married bachelor, a man who is married and both not married at the same time. Is that possible? No, it's not possible. Are you agnostic on that?
No, it doesn't seem possible. The definitions contradict.
Right. So if something has a contradictory definition, that's a good reason to think it probably does not exist, right? You don't have to be agnostic, you can be an atheist towards bachelors. So if there's something like a mind outside of space-time, that seems to contradict, at least it contradicts all of our knowledge. And so it's rational to be like, no, that doesn't exist. You don't need to be agnostic about it. You need to be like, yeah, that seems to contradict all of our knowledge of all of reality.
But we don't know what is beyond death.
Beyond death. I don't care about death. I care about minds.
We assume it's just nothing.
Worm food.
Yeah. Essentially, that's the physical.
But I didn't say anything about death. I said like minds existing outside of space-time. That is a contradiction.
Yeah, it does seem so. But then wouldn't the entire mind doesn't necessarily. Is space-time infinite? Because our universe can come to an end and our time comes to an end, but time is relative.
Sure, I don't really care about that though. The point is that a mind has
But
thoughts,
then you're saying
right?
without
A mind has
space-time.
thoughts, a mind has ideas, has intentions. Like all of those things require change, time.
Yeah, and coming back to time dilation and space-time again.
What?
Time is relative because we exist within this bubble of universe.
Well, I don't care about that. So I'm not saying time is infinite. I'm saying in order to have a mind like a god to do stuff, it has to exist in a field like time in order to have thoughts and intentions. If it doesn't have change, it can't exist as a mind because it doesn't have any thoughts, doesn't have any intentions, nothing changes. And so it's not a mind, it's not conscious, it's not a person, because to have any aspect of what a person is, you need to have thoughts and intentions and motivations and change. And if God, who is outside of space-time, doesn't have any of those things, it's not a mind.
So would you say that the universe is a mind then?
No. Not.
But it changes.
Yes. So
why should anybody say?
So
why should anybody assume that the space is mine?
One sec.
I'm sorry, I'm seeing this more abstractly rather. I'm saying like because like I don't necessarily agree with this. It's just the potentials of it.
So in order to
sorry
one
if
sec,
I come
one
off as
sec.
like
I
stubborn,
understood.
but I'm just
I
like trying
understood.
to approach it from different
So
thoughts. I guess
my argument was, in order for something to be a mind, it has to have change. That does not mean that anything that has change is a mind. All roses are flowers, but not all flowers are roses. So, mind, to be a mind.
But what is a mind then? What is a mind then? Can you define that then?
A conscious entity with intentions and motivations and desires.
I also like.
Isn't that just a conscious entity then? That's not a mind necessarily. Because you can have like I would say as someone who is like a vegetable would still have a mind. They just don't have a conscious mind.
No. So like a mind is a thing that produces consciousness. So if it doesn't have any consciousness, you don't have a mind. You have a brain.
So yeah, one thing produces the other.
And I would say it is quite nested. It is that the analogy I make, and no analogy is perfect, but the brain is the hardware and the mind is the software. And the software runs some conscious programs and some unconscious programs. It needs you to be conscious when you're doing walking. It doesn't need you to be conscious when you, for instance, have your heart beating, or maybe in between. Sometimes you do need to be able to hold your breath, but generally speaking, you don't need to be conscious to still be breathing.
Some things are just functions, you're saying.
Well, to me, it's just very nested. It is very much consciousness needs a mind, the mind needs a brain.
So, to put it in a similar way, then, to say like the universe and it's like this bubble, let's say like there's other bubbles that we can't reach or see, but they exist because, well, it's the sum of all of the universe. Then, would these be like different minds in there to say that they come to their change, their idea or expression of life as they come to live it from beginning to end?
What?
The reason, no, you were you about to say something, TJ?
I have no idea what his question there was.
It just seems
I'm just
weird
saying
to
as
call that
analogy.
stuff minds. It's because a mind we tend to tie, at least right now, with an agency. Were they in the right mind when they were doing this action? And so it seems very anthropic, anthropomorphic. There we go. To just say this universe has some galaxy or the entire universe itself is a mind, because I think it dilutes what we traditionally or currently think of as a mind. Could be wrong, but yeah.
Would simple celled organisms be considered having a mind, or is that a function? To say like, okay, let's say there's like some kind of infection or some kind of like damage and they react.
Function.
Or like say there's something going on wrong inside of it and they react to like expel it.
A mind would be a qualia, a conscious experience. If you don't have a conscious experience, you don't have a mind. Mind and consciousness are synonymous there.
Wait, isn't that okay, that's a conscious experience though.
Yes.
Would let's say these cells, as they learn things over time, like they become more efficient, would that be considered a conscious
Nope.
experience?
You need qualia to have a conscious experience.
What is the quality of that?
The fact that I'm seeing a TV, like I have a subjective first-person experience, what it's like to be something.
Isn't that subjective to well human beings then?
No.
Because like that would be a quality of whatever the existence is.
No, like cats have
You wouldn't be able to
qualia,
perceive it
dogs
because
have
you're not.
qualia, orangutans, probably some
Yeah,
dolphins.
so all things would have qualia as long as they have some kind of experience and they interact or have agency with the things they interact
Well,
with.
you don't need agency. That doesn't matter. All that matters is, do you have quality experience? Like, do you have a first-person mental experience of the world? Bacteria do not. Worms do not. Flies probably do.
What makes the difference for mental then? Because like this is where I'm drawing the confusion.
What is the confusion?
Well, for things to change. Certain things are just cause and effect. Let's say a meteor hits the world and you have a what's it called? An explosion of some sort. Like there's an impact, burning, like things die, there's dust thrown up in the air, cause and effect.
Sure.
But then there's things that react to that.
Sure. And what's the question?
What is the mental difference?
Mental is a specific kind of change. So like mental is a brain that produces a consciousness, which also takes change. But change isn't the important fact there. Change is just one of the necessary ingredients. Just like there's a difference between your heart and your lungs. What makes the difference? They're different. They do different things. So your brain produces your consciousness. It also produces other things too.
I guess my question then would be kind of like could there be things that like operate on a time scale that we're unable to perceive and they have their own thoughts then that because of our own like existence we're unable to will pick up on
Yeah,
it.
but they still have
But they
change,
exist
so
around.
it's still time. So even if it's on a different time scale or whatever, it's
Yeah.
still time. So it wouldn't be outside of space-time.
Okay.
We have a suggestion from Pocket in our audience, who was a guest here earlier. He's saying, explain identity, and our guest will probably understand this better.
Oh, okay, cool.
I think he means
You help me out?
personal identity. Personal identity, it's quality experience. So personal identity is the identity of an individual self, an individual conscious entity, qualia. It's just another word for qualia.
Pocket is clarifying that he means the law of identity.
The law of identity, a thing is itself and not itself.
There also can't be, maybe somewhere out there or somewhere in the future, a sophisticated enough bacteria that has enough systems that has consciousness. But right now, we get our conscious from our system of neural networks. And so it takes a lot of different systems and a lot of different types of inputs of sensory information, like the nodes being able to, so we could feel, but then completely different sensors when we're taking in our eyes. And we seem to take all of this data in and we assemble it together, and that tends to be our conscious experience. That doesn't
Thank
seem
you.
to
It's
be.
been a while.
What's that?
No, thank you. You're helping me rectify a couple errors in my understanding, because it's been a while since what's it called? I heard about someone actually voiced that properly.
Oh, cool. See, I'm obsessed about the subject itself. I come with a personal background. I have to say this at least once a podcast. I have epilepsy, and I always say that consciousness never gets. And I'm actually very happy because that I have it taken care of also because of science. So there's actually good medication as long as I take it. Nothing happens at all. My joke is always, if it does happen, just push me out of the way. But I use it as a fine-tune knife because I find that people aren't serious about the notion of conscious until we start to really attach it to medical grounds, because that's when it seems to become serious to all. I always get, you don't even know that these types of questions, we're dealing with the brain at all. Maybe it's a completely different organ. And yet when we, have a neurological problem, most of us go to a neurologist. And so, yeah.
Oh, shoot. That's good to hear. Well, yeah. All right. Appreciate that. And thank you for sharing.
Absolutely. Thank you for having this good conversation.
Yeah.
We really appreciate you joining us. Thank you.
Yeah, shoot. I'll try listening in the future. Take care.
Feel free to join us. We're here every first Sunday of every month.
First Sunday every month. Cool.
Richard Madsen, Demolished Doctrine. Hey, your microphone seems to be sorted out. Welcome back, sir.
Peace and respect to you all. I miss you guys. I've been busy.
Oh, it's so good to hear your voice, man. It's been a long time. So, for those who don't know, Amy and I both know Demolished Doctrine, Richard Madsen, for a long time, mostly on YouTube circles. So it's great to have you here, sir. What brings you here today?
Well, I noticed the title was Theist Helpline, and I'm a theist, so I'm here to help.
Woohoo!
I'm supposed to do, but it's just a play on words, man.
No, not at all. We're welcome to have you. We're welcome to have you here, and we call it that mostly because we're inviting theists to come on and tell us what they believe and why.
I think, first of all of us should accept help. That is counsel from others, especially those that we find we can respect, that act respectable, and you guys do, and congratulations on that. But yeah, we should accept counsel from each other. I think that's some of the best progress humans have made is in groups and teams. And I wish deeply that more Christians would take seriously a lot of the argumentation that I've heard you, Amy, make on your show with James, and and Randolph as well. Taco, I don't know so much, and T-Jump, I don't know so much, but you guys.
Well, those Taco and T-Jump are important people to get to know too. They make a lot of contributions to communities overall. So, and they're both working in very different directions too, but there's a lot of overlap. So I highly recommend them. Yeah, taking counsel from people is important. We do need to be kind of careful though. A lot of people will see counselors as authoritative on giving advice. But not all counselors are created equal. So it's important for people, I think, to still question what they're being advised and to kind of verify things on their own as well.
I think that if you doubt everything and you test everything that you come into contact with, first of all, almost everything's worth testing. Just to see if it's true or not, because our biases would lead us to believe that something wouldn't work, and that's not necessarily true. It could work. It's just our biases keeping us from testing it. So even the things that seem semi counterintuitive, I would say to give those a testing against reality and see if they work in actuality. Yeah, something like that.
So to say, and what I was saying, there's 2 points that need to be considered as well. One of them is not everybody knows how to test things really well. So that's an area to look into. Scientific method is a good place to start. Philosophy can also provide a lot of insight into looking into things. The other point is that some people will take it too far and apply skepticism to a point where and jump down a deep rabbit hole to the point where their life isn't even functional anymore. We see conspiracy theorists do this kind of thing quite a lot. And what I'll often say about that is many conspiracy theorists do have excellent critical thinking skills and are really good at applying skepticism. The problem that they run into is that very often they take it too far. They don't have the wisdom to know when to stop. So, for example, if I'm to tell you that there's a cat in my backyard, a conspiracy theorist who takes this stuff too far would probably want proof of this and want to know that the proof is valid, and on it goes and gets laborious.
That cat in your backyard is an FBI robot cat that's been sent to spy on you, and it has a camera built into its collar so that it can see everything that's going on outside of your home.
Obviously.
But most people will just believe me because this is a common occurrence. Many people have backyards, and it's not unusual for cats to show up in people's backyards from time to time. So it's just how it is. People tell me, so what I do is I kind of gauge the claim that's being made too. Is it a pretty common thing? Then I'm going to give a weight to it that WEIGHT, that it is that is in favor of it being probably true. But if they tell me something that's kind of extraordinary, then I'm likely going to have a much lower weight of confidence on it, and I'm going to want to know more before I'm going to be willing to believe it. Does that how does that ring with you, Richard?
Oh, I think that's good, solid thinking. And when it crosses that line, I like to use a different word instead of skepticism, cynicism, because I think that's a good. What's that?
Cynicism has a negative connotation, though, doesn't it?
Well, doesn't being overly critical and accepting nothing from outside of your already presently accepted frame, isn't that a fairly decent description of cynicism?
Oh, you're talking about the conspiracy theorists being cynical.
Yes.
Oh, okay. In that case, yeah, that probably does fit pretty well, assuming that their intentions are negative. I don't know if that's always the case, although Taco's example is very interesting.
It's not always the case, but you gave the example of a person who is self-defeating in life and cannot accomplish certain things that normally people would because of that extreme skepticism.
Sure,
That's
but I don't think that they have I wouldn't say they necessarily have a cynical point of view. I think they're just taking it too far. To be cynical, I think, includes some kind of negative intention.
Negative intent. Yeah. Okay. Okay. If it has to have negative intention, then it's not cynicism. I'll
Not
concede
necessarily. Yeah, yeah. It can look that
Fair
way
enough.
to people who are frustrated with it, and yeah. Okay. No.
Okay. So, what's the
Now,
definition of God? I think is the real question here.
okay, and this varies, and I was going to ask you about demolished doctrine, but we can go with defining God. So, typically, the definitions that I encounter include some kind of supernatural aspect, and very often, like with the Christian and Islamic gods, they include things like omniscience and omnipotence. But there are some kind of non-scientific abilities or non-unrealistic abilities that would kind of fit in the supernatural realm. So that seems to be part and parcel with the religious definitions of gods and goddesses that I encounter. Does that kind of fit with what you've encountered, or do you get a different kind of a different outlay from people sometimes?
No, I've encountered that in my effort to make people, think about what they're actually saying and accepting, and bias and cognitive dissonance and all that taken into consideration. It seems that people don't realize when they're saying things that are unreasonable, and especially in that realm of society and religious societies. Yeah, I don't think that. Nope. Rather let you go. Go ahead.
Huh? No, we're listening to you. Go ahead.
Okay, so I don't think that, for reasons of argumentation that I've heard, these things can be self-defeating. For instance, knowing everything is knowing also the future. If you know the future, you can't change your mind. The ability to change your mind is a common ability. I can do it. But a God omniscient could not change their mind, thereby limiting their power. So then they have limited power. They, in fact, don't have a power that I have, or they were wrong in the first place. So you can't have omniscience and omnipotence in a singular being. That doesn't make sense. So it's things like that leads me to believe that the quad omni Plato God is not logically possible. It's self-defeating. But I don't think that that's necessary in a belief for God. So I mean, I like to ask people, what's your minimum acceptable God? Like if I'm 3 and my dad's a full-grown man, he is somewhat a God to me. He's 4 times my weight. He's 10 times my strength. He's 3 times my intellectual abilities. He's 5 times my education. He's a pretty intimidating guy, when you're 3. So does that qualify him as a god? Well, it's getting pretty close.
Yeah, and I do find in recent years there's more. This does come up a bit more where people are trying to define non-mysterious, non-supernatural, non-unrealistic things as a god.
Sure, but that could lead
some
to
people
having
even
a
define the whole
useless god.
universe. Some people even define the whole universe as a god, and
Yeah, I know a guy.
yeah, it just starts
I
to
just
get
have
kind of
trouble
silly.
calling something a god when 99.999. Let's stop right there. You get the idea. Would kill me. I don't think that's my god.
When you
all I've
talked
got to
about
go is too high in this atmosphere, and I'm toast.
yeah, and the claim that the world was made just the universe and everything was just made just for us is easily debunked because
That's a silly claim.
there are so many things here on Earth that are not suitable for life.
And most
The
of them
inside
are
of
in Australia.
volcanoes. The inside of volcanoes. Oh, did you just say Australia?
Like most of Australia, just kill you. Yeah.
Oh yeah, most of Australia. Yeah, that's true. They've got giant flies, and that'll take a bite out of you and stuff like that. I've heard. You did mention earlier about the paradox of omniscience and omnipotence, and I wholeheartedly agree. I've been talking about this as well, and the concept I usually put forward so that people understand what the paradox is more easily is that if in my neighborhood, this god knows that tomorrow is going to be a sunny day, and then tomorrow rolls along, and they decide at the beginning of the day to change the weather for the day using their all-powerful abilities to rain or snow. They've then invalidated their omniscience from the day before. So this is echoing what you just said earlier, I think.
The more you know. Yeah, it's logically impossible. So,
and then the defense I get from theists sometimes on that is that the God is not constrained by logic, which is interesting because they're using logical arguments or attempting to use logical arguments to prove them.
Well, here's my favorite. Philosophy is not important. Abstracts don't matter. I love when people say those things. I mean, I'll just point out the problem with that. Saying that philosophy is unimportant is a philosophical statement. And then if you say something like language is irrelevant because we just use words however we want, then I have to ask the question why the person is speaking, because they're using language which is irrelevant according to them. But anyway, moving on.
I would say that philosophy is optional, but it's an option that I really enjoy.
I don't think it's optional, actually, but that's not the conversation I want to have.
Oh, we'll do that another time. Sure.
Yeah, that'd be lovely. I mean, I love you
I'd
guys.
love to be corrected on that.
Well, okay. Well, some other day. Okay. So, all right. So what's the minimalistic God for you personally, Randolph? What is the minimum thing you would accept as a God? And I'm like, seriously, have you ever thought about that?
Not really, but I think there are going to be some kind of supernatural characteristics. So
But don't you define supernatural as something that can't be in nature? It has to be above nature, out of our physics and understanding of all that sort of thing. In which case, it doesn't exist. And if it doesn't exist, it can't exist.
Yeah,
Everything that
supernatural
can't exist does exist, right?
Or having some kind of unrealistic capability. So that's kind of, from what I've heard from the vast majority of theists I've discussed these topics with, there's always some kind of unrealistic ability or some kind of supernatural characteristic that's part of it all. It's miraculous.
For you, that's right out. That's right off the table. That's not even on the table because that's not possible, right?
Of course, and that's the problem. But they insist that it is, and this is what I run into all the time. So,
well, I'm so sorry. I'd like to apologize to everyone for all the religious folks who ever said silly things. You have my personal apology. I don't know what that carries. But
I'm not expecting an apology. It's okay, but I appreciate the sentiments.
I mean, I drag some of that luggage around with me, and thereby, it's nice if somebody who says they're a Christian says, "I'm sorry, Randolph, for all the silly things Christians have said." Okay, so
I'm sure maybe the rest of our panel has some ideas on in response to your question as well, because my perspective is mine and
you haven't
not
given
necessarily
it yet.
Representative of everybody else here.
Randolph, you haven't given it yet. You've only said what isn't possible.
Okay, but you asked me what I would accept as what a god is, and I told you that seems to be the definition that comes up. Otherwise, I really don't know how to define it beyond those characteristics. There's all kinds of other things can be added to it, but those do seem to be fundamental parts of it. And
what if it just understood?
I'm an atheist.
What if it just yeah. Oh yes, I'm well aware. What if it just had such an advanced understanding of physics that you saw it accomplishing things that you were certain were impossible?
Well, I would be looking at what is the phenomenon that's going on and how can we explain it. That's what I'd be looking at. I don't have an inclination to jump to it being some kind of all-powerful being doing it.
Fair enough. So what if it had extremely advanced understanding of what physics are, not changing physics, just taking advantage of them, and we were unable to explain what we were seeing? You know the old saying, significant enough how's that saying go? Significant enough advancement in technology could be mistaken for magic, something like that.
You're getting into an Arthur C. Clarke perspective here, I believe. So there are many people in the world that know a lot about physics. I am nowhere close to understanding physics like that. I would say Tom Jump understands physics a lot better than I do, because I know he's studied it. And then there are professional physicists who are way up there. In the past, there's Carl Sagan, and he explained ideas. He demonstrated with Flatland how to look at different dimensions. That was educational. Now, there are others who are doing magical acts, creating illusions, and showing things using, I don't know, obviously things that are real to make things that look like they're not real. So
distraction and blocking and lots of stuff like that. Yeah.
And I end up with a question: how does that work? How did that happen? I'm entertained, of course, or I'm curious, but I'm not uncomfortable with not knowing the answer. If your questions are kind of around the expectation that I'm not comfortable with not knowing everything, that's not me. I'm perfectly okay with the I don't know mantra.
I like that. That's honesty.
And it's also why if a force comes along or aliens were to come down, even though they had technology that we didn't understand, if they were to call them gods, we'd probably be safe in saying, you still look like you're made of stuff from the universe.
Sure. What would be wrong with that, though?
Oh, not that there's nothing wrong with that. It's just, the famous quote is, why does God need a starship? And
we could delve into an ethical consideration rabbit hole here. Would it be ethical for advanced space aliens to come here and show off their technology? Star Trek has their prime directives that talk about non-interference that partly address this, but I think this is a different area for another day, probably.
Well, it's the only thing I'm really about, actually.
Oh, okay. The ethics of it all. Sure. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, what makes something important is its applicable usefulness, its benefit, and that's very species specific. So when I'm saying this, I'm only concerned with Homo sapiens sapien. I'm not worried about anything else. That there must be and I think we're scientifically and in politics and socially trying to work toward, the best possible, most well-being for our kind.
Best possible
overall.
world, maybe.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. I think we're always trying to accomplish that. Trying to get off the planet, trying to defeat disease, trying to extend life, etc., like that. And yes, I've heard you speak of all the difficulties of it. I've heard Sam Harris speak of it as well, and I recognize that those are valid points. Most of them, but there certainly could be a premium society and a premium situation, so that there is overall, not necessarily individually, but an overall best possible case scenario of well-being for human beings, unless you think not.
I think the fact that we have all these scientific advancements have been very helpful to a lot of people and have really improved quality of life for a lot of people. Like one of the most basic ones is agriculture, mass production of food. That a lot less people are hungry and they're able to focus on other aspects of their lives, and we see a lot more progress around the world because of it. And people live longer, people live healthier. We have a better understanding of how the body works, so experts in those fields can make recommendations to people to have better health habits and live better lives. Technology has also provided a way for people to be more lazy if they want. So laziness is a luxury. A lot of these technological advancements are luxuries. So hopefully people will at least do something with their lives that's going to be productive, but not all people do. So there's always a downside to these things as well, because that can end up in the long term also being a little bit destructive. But for the most part, I think overall it's a really good thing for our species.
Sure. So what and I'm not saying just what if. I believe this is true, that there's a much more ancient society of human beings that have technology indistinguishable for us from magic, that are the authors of these several stories, not just whatever Judaic story or Judaic derivative story, whatever religion resulted from those, that exists somewhere in the universe, and what they're trying to what we're trying to accomplish for ourselves has been accomplished by them, and that they're offering that free of charge, without qualifiers, which is really interesting. So I think that's actually the case, that religion is a mistake. It's thinking that advanced society is performing magic, which is why you get things like the quad omni god. That they have to eventually claim that to make their god the biggest. But it's not reasonable at all, and it's certainly not being claimed in any of the stories.
Yeah, many of the omnis come later, and they just get defended by trying to reinterpret the book.
Sure, but all the actual claims, for instance, in the Judaic, the Abrahamic religions, all of the claims are qualified. It's only religious practitioners that blow those claims up. It's always a certain situation, and it's always, involving a very, very small group, or usually only one person is being spoken of. And to expound that out, to stretch that beyond its practical limits from what's actually written there, is, I think it's just personal pride. It's their own pride getting in their way.
So the idea that ancient peoples knew better than what we know today, it always seemed like a curious claim to me, because they didn't have the insight of scientific knowledge. At least it didn't seem to be, because they were not talking about scientific method. The writings don't seem to encourage any of that. And I look at
Randolph, we've had an impasse of communication there.
Okay. Well, when I look at things like there's, let's see, the Book of Numbers in Christianity has this bitter water that induces an abortion.
Yes.
And yet it turns out that's probably not what the actual cause of inducement is. Rather, it's more likely there's a lot of stress going on and there's health issues, so abortions may have come more easily in those times. I don't know. But I'm not seeing stuff in scripture from the pieces I've read that seem to indicate that there is advanced understanding of things, like an advanced understanding of psychology. Where is that following the story of Abraham being ordered to kill his son Isaac? That would be, I would think, a golden opportunity for the authors to reflect on the psychology of not threatening your child with death, and like, what are the psychological ramifications of any kid experiencing a parent trying to kill them? Like, it's going to be pretty awful for them, I would think. They're very traumatic. I know you said we're at an impasse there, and feel free to go ahead and elaborate on it.
I'll take one of your examples, the first one, the temple magic. Okay, so in the Abrahamic religions, especially, you're familiar with Christianity, probably more than Judaism. The idea of the temple has been translated to like something on this earth that we go to on a regular basis, right? The only problem with that is we have, because of the ideas that we read with our limited understanding, we have read that as like something we're supposed to build. So we built stuff, right? And then something we're supposed to participate in. And you have things like declarations of who the high priest is in Judaism, right? For whatever temple or however they worked it. I don't know if it was by area or family or whatever. It doesn't really much matter. I believe all those things are misunderstandings, because the temple, and then within the temple, the Holy of Holies, in consideration that these are called temporary dwellings, it's actually referring to like them being not so darn meaningful and only representative of something that does have meaning. I believe that meaningful thing is the habitation of God, which is why in the text it says things like, and God lived in the Holy of Holies. So they built something, despite the fact that even Old Testament says you can't house God. That will not work out. They built something, and then they think God lived in the thing that they built. Yeah, but that's the kind of misunderstanding that I'm talking about. If it were referring not to something of this earth, not built with human hands whatsoever, something we had never seen before, and the implications of that means the high priest is not a person on the planet at all. It can't be. And the idea of taking dirt from the floor of the temple or the tabernacle or any other such place is talking about what is mundane and lowly in that higher place that we haven't seen. It's not talking about dirt causing an abortion because it's dissolved in water. Oh, with the God magic that she knew she was guilty,
Yeah, it sounds to me like part of the problem, because you're emphasizing misunderstandings, that part of the problem is with the instruction manual.
No, it's with the tradition of reading of the instruction manual. The instruction manual itself is fine. I'll give you a real quick, for instance. Today in the United States, if we don't like the things some person says or the way that they say it or something like that, we might call them an ass, right? But that comes from an older expression. That older expression is they bray like an ass. And the expression that
Like a
was
donkey.
derived from, what's that?
Yeah, like a donkey.
Yeah, well, you might say donkey, but originally it's always been ass.
Oh, yeah, I understand.
Now, we've recently made that, anal orifice, but that's not what was meant by ass. It meant the animal. Okay, and then before that, the expression was they had the jawbone of an ass. That was the expression in the Hebrew culture, something about 3,000 years ago or so. So if you said someone had the jawbone of an ass, you don't mean they're carrying a bone around. That's not what it means. But Christians read Samson and think he carried, part of a dead animal with him. He bashed in 10,000 heads with the bone of an animal. That's completely out of cultural reference. It has nothing to do with what the expression meant whatsoever. And that's a simple one to follow. That one's pretty obvious. But still, you talk to a Christian, they're going to say, yeah, this guy made out of flesh, and apparently nobody thought to pick up a spear or a bow and arrow and end this guy. Yeah, he went around bashed out 10,000 brains. That's what he did with a bone. This is goofy, and it's not what it means. It means he was thought a fool. It
doesn't sound futuristic either.
It means he was thought a fool, and they understood later that he was right. And then they changed their mind.
There does seem to be a wide array of different interpretations on different things. I do find that the way that you're understanding it over the years, I've heard you talk about it, is kind of I consider it kind of unique. You're in a category of your own, very very different from a lot of the others. Because a lot of the others have a lot of similarities, and you just cut right at it. Very different perspectives. Now, I think I may have asked you this before, and I'm sorry I've forgotten the answer you gave because it's been so long. Is there a particular translation of the Bible that you prefer, or are you basically going back further than like pre-translation times?
I think actually all the stories are one, and by that I mean Buddhism is Christianity is the story of Ragnarok is end times, etc., etc., and there's just no end to that. That all of these ancient stories, with taking into consideration their societies, their idioms, their value systems, it's all just one story. They're not in conflict with each other, and they're extremely repetitive, and there's only like 20 themes.
Yeah, you're looking at the bigger picture, and there are people, which is fine, and then I think that's a good thing to do. There are quite a few people who talk about how religions are plagiarized from each other, and they can show the timeline of it.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I like to think of it more as an homage than plagiarism.
Okay.
But just
Yeah.
the same, the stories are definitely there and pre-exist, for instance, whatever popular religion you like. But the interesting thing
okay.
is when they're cross culture, when the culture was separated, and the ideas were introduced, and yet have the same stories in compliance with their culture, of course. Like it wouldn't make sense if I were Hindi to say to me, "Oh, try this hamburger. It's delicious." You know, you just wouldn't to a Hindi guy for obvious reasons. But
Okay. Yeah, Richard,
so,
we've
so the
we've
same
covered
thing
quite a
in
lot.
different cultures mean different things.
just
Yes,
I'll
I've
just
worn
sorry,
my
no,
welcome.
it's okay. I'll just say like one thing, like to support what you're saying. I've noticed that there are, and a lot of people have noticed that there are certain ideas. There's the silver rule and the golden rule, and then I've added my golden preference, which is an improvement on that as well, which is strive
Hear
to
that real quick.
strive to treat others in accordance with their preferences. But there are different ideas out there on that, and people will often say they essentially mean the same things, but there are subtle nuances. So I think this would be a good thing for another discussion for another day, because I think we've gone quite deep into quite a bit of this, and we do, as Tom Jump just pointed out, we do have somebody else in the audience.
I'd like to respect that other person as well, and I've soaked up a lot of your time.
Richard,
but
no,
know
it's
that I
okay.
love you guys, and I appreciate
Richard,
you.
I just wanted to say, did you want to give a quick summary of what you were covering, just to make sure there's nothing missing for another 30 seconds or something before for ending?
Sure, love to. And just one small blanket statement that I think is true in reality. Human beings, if you're unhappy in your life or some part of your life, and there's something that's true in reality, and that rules over you, and you have no choice about it, that you haven't accepted. So if you're unhappy, it's because you're maladjusted. And as soon as you accept that truth that's trying to be presented to you, you're going to be happier. And I recommend being happier. But peace to you all.
Richard,
and
I would like to address that with you at some point in the future. Let's bring it up in the future. Thank you very much.
Peace, guys. Later.
Peace to you too.
It was good having you on, Richard.
That was such a toxic exit.
Really?
Yeah.
T Jump did. I think he wants to talk with Mathematician. Mathematician, welcome. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on.
Good talking to you. We've spoken before, and I think you've spoken with some of us as well. The others
Yeah.
here. Yeah. So
You're
what's on your mind
Canadian.
today, sir?
I just want to say I'm a Canadian too. Well, I'm technically Canadian because my dad's born in Canada, but I love the way you say a boot. But anyways,
that's great.
anyways, last time we were discussing T-Jump, I asked you the question, what was one of the most intriguing and mysterious confusing things about the universe that make you scratch your head the most? And I think, and I don't remember exactly what my question was. It was something along that lines. And I think your response was the random number function in Schrodinger's wave equation. Does that sound correct?
Maybe.
Okay. So I did some research into like the different like interpretations, and to me, like as an atheist mathematician who doesn't really know too much, like I know that I understand like the mathematics of like what I was looking at, but I didn't really I've never really looked into the different interpretations. But when I look through them, my first like go-to reaction was that pilot wave theory seems to be the most like materialist perspective. Would you agree with that?
Sure.
So under the pilot wave theory, the random number generator or random number function is explained by the pilot wave. So I guess to me, like it seems, since pilot wave, like the other interpretations to me sound crazy. The idea that consciousness collapses a wave function is stupid to me. Like it just doesn't sound right. And a lot of the people who initially coined this or really pushed this interpretation, I believe, were religious. And I believe even God said, or not God, I believe Einstein said God does not play with dice.
Well, I think so. The consciousness collapse is the Wigner von Neumann hypothesis.
I thought it was the Copenhagen interpretation.
No, Copenhagen interpretation is that it just doesn't say anything about the collapse; it just says it collapses.
But somewhere in between the consciousness and the particle landing, right? That there is a collapse.
Yeah, the Copenhagen interpretation just says there is a collapse. That's all it says. It doesn't say why. It just doesn't care why.
Oh, okay.
The
I didn't know
consciousness
that.
collapse is the Wigner von Neumann hypothesis.
So,
but I think what
yeah,
I
go
was
ahead.
saying, the most confusing or awe-inspiring thing or whatever about reality was the randomness, the fact that randomness is fundamental. It's not specifically from the Schrodinger equation. It's from the delayed choice quantum eraser experiment or something, that randomness itself is fundamental. That part, that I think is weird and stupid, and I don't like it.
But if under pilot wave theory, it's the randomness is actually just our lack of understanding of the wave itself.
Sure.
For example, if I put a ball in water and I shake the water, if I can see both the waves and the particle, then I can use some mathematics to determine where that particle is gonna, or where that ball is gonna land in the pool.
Sure. There's several.
Without those waves. Oh, go ahead.
There's several different interpretations where it's not. There's no randomness. The randomness is only apparent. The pilot wave, hidden variable, many worlds interpretation. All of those interpretations are deterministic, where there isn't a randomness. None of those are the consensus view. Like the pilot wave theory is essentially a super minority position, about as minority as consciousness collapse. Consciousness collapse. Nobody really accepts that. It's stupid. But so is pilot wave. No one really accepts pilot wave either. The consensus view is that randomness is fundamental. That is the majority view in physics. It is randomness is a irreducible fundamental thing in physics, and that's the thing I find.
I think that consensus really is convenient for, I think, a lot of conspiracy theorists who, invent things like quantum mysticism or the von Neumann interpretation or whatever you called it. Yeah.
I mean, sure.
To me, these like, it's like in my opinion, it seems almost an extension of religion itself. Like people who follow quantum mysticism, they hold these really like weird dogmatic beliefs, and they wouldn't have their beliefs if they were simply told that the way these particles react are determined by the motion of a pilot wave that we can't see.
So I disagree there.
The idea of, well, I'll give you an example.
Well,
the many worlds
so
theory.
let me
When I
interject
looked
for
it
a
up,
second. They hold
Go
their
ahead.
beliefs because they like their beliefs, and then they try to find other things to justify their beliefs. So it doesn't matter whether or not we told them all particles were deterministic or not. They're still going to find some woo something or another to justify their belief. It's the argument from ignorance. Here's something we don't understand, therefore my hypothesis. And so it doesn't make a difference whether or not the unknown.
No, I understand. I have no evidence for pilot wave.
Well, no, that part doesn't make a
However,
difference.
I do believe
it's that if you solve a problem, they're just going to go to the next unknown and say, because of this unknown, I'm right. It doesn't matter. It's not because that there is this unknown in quantum mechanics that therefore these quantum woo people have their beliefs. The quantum woo people have their beliefs and are going to justify it in any way they can, regardless of whether the unknown is the specific randomness function in the universe or some other unknown in physics. They're just going to pick an unknown and justify it. They don't care. So it really makes no difference whether or not we admit that there is this unknown in physics, because the quantum woo people are always just going to find unknowns to justify their belief. But I think that because the experiments that, like the delayed quantum eraser, the predicted results were those expected if randomness is fundamental, and they were correct, is evidence that randomness is fundamental. Like, obviously,
but that's because they don't measure the.
Well, you can explain any results with any hypothesis. Like, it's problem of underdetermination. You can take any results.
Yes, right.
And so it's.
I agree with that, but we have to. But hold on, there are certain hypotheses that we can just disregard and prefer others, right? Like you mentioned the von Neumann.
Wigner.
I can't remember the. Wigner?
Wigner.
Okay,
Yes.
von Neumann Wigner.
W-I-G, Wigner.
Okay, Wigner, sorry. Von Neumann Wigner interpretation, right? You and I, even though it is some sort of explanation, right? I think you and I can disregard that interpretation because it begs more questions than it answers. In the same way, in a multiverse theory, right? Not only is there an instantiation within this theory, not only is there an instantiation of multiple universes, but somehow they're all connected together via a wave function. And to me, this is what doesn't make sense to me, is that if we have equations that show that it's a wave function, then why is it so hard to just say it's connected by a wave? To me, it's super weird to connect multiple universes with a wave function. What does that even mean? I'll let you respond.
Well, so the wave function, the pilot wave theory model, has lots of problems of its own. And the problems they look different from our conceptual perspective, from the mathematic perspective. Like the many worlds interpretation, its advantage is that it's mathematically very simple. It's two things. It's the like the many world, like the multiverse hypothesis, it's just using the energy density of space-time and virtual particles, and Guth's early universe inflation just uses the math from those things. You combine it, poof, you get the multiverse and the many worlds interpretation. And that's very simple. Whereas the pilot wave theory is very, very complicated. Mathematically, it's not as simple, even though conceptually it's much more simple, much more using stuff we already know about. Mathematically, it's not. And so if you're trying to establish which hypotheses we should omit from some kind of Occam's razor simplicity perspective, I think that's bad. I don't think we should do that. The multiverse people are going to say ours is mathematically simpler, and the pilot wave theory people are going to say ours is ontologically simpler. And I'm going to say, I don't care. Give me testable predictions. And the one that got testable predictions right.
But pilot, okay, sorry.
Well, the one that got testable predictions right was the randomness is fundamental. And so I'm going to go with them. I don't care how ontologically complex or how mathematically complex. I don't think any of those things matter. It was able to predict the future before we knew it, and all of the other ones just kind of explained it after the fact.
That's fine to say that, we don't know what causes the random function and the wave function. But to me, I think it's naive to say that because we don't know, we might as well just say it's fundamental.
Well, we're not saying because we don't know it's fundamental. That's not the way it worked. What they said was I think randomness is a fundamental force in reality. If randomness is a fundamental force, here is what we would expect to see in this experiment. Do the experiment, get the results that confirms the hypothesis. So it's not that we don't know, therefore randomness. It's that we think randomness is true. Here's a prediction we're going to make. We're going to do an experiment specifically to test for this. And then you get exactly the results we would expect to see. That's good evidence that the randomness is fundamental. Now, can you explain that in other ways? Absolutely. You can always explain that in other ways. But the reason the consensus is randomness is fundamental is because that's the one that's making the predictions and getting them before we know it. And the other ones don't.
Yeah, I do have to say though that like amongst the like
You cut out. You said amongst the and then stops. I think you're breaking up. Can anybody else hear him? Randolph, Amy, am I breaking up?
Yeah, we can hear him.
Okay, so it's
Yes, I
okay,
can.
one
I
sec,
can
let me
hear him.
refresh.
I have to actually get going pretty soon here, but I was just trying to say that like Pilot Wave is the most materialist interpretation because it does not instantiate like any sort of what I think is like La Land material. Like for example, a multiverse, like some yeah, it's not testable, like he said, just like pilot wave theory is currently not testable. But there's an intuition in me that says like if I were to measure things out in the universe, I'd be more likely to find a pilot wave than a second universe.
I agree. I think from an ontological simplicity perspective.
And so like there's a part of me, yeah, there's ontological simplicity to it. And I don't understand how that's not the default.
Because it didn't make testable predictions. The other one did. So like the way we establish the most plausible.
Well, that's because we don't see the pilot wave. It's unfair, right?
Well, no, it's that like whether or not we see the pilot wave doesn't matter. What we want to say is if there's a pilot wave, here's a prediction we would expect to see in some experiment. Do an experiment, get the results. It's a pilot wave. We don't actually need to see the pilot wave. I don't care about that. The way science works is we say hypothesis, prediction, test for results. So it doesn't matter if we actually see the thing itself.
But I'm pretty sure that if you have pilot wave and you understand like how particles are moving at a grand scale, like we don't have that right now, but if we did, right, we can see certain waves going through the entire region, right, and make I think we can reduce the quote unquote randomness as we do that. And that is what happens. Like the more information we gather about the region, right, the more we can predict how particles will interact with each other. And like that to me makes sense in pilot wave because with normal waves, right, the more information we have about the wave in its locality, in a certain locality, the more information we know what's going on inside because of like calculus, multivariable calculus or whatever.
So I started with the same idea you had. I thought pilot wave makes the most sense. It's the most consistent. It has the least new parts. I think what you need to do is go research why the consensus goes against it. And in that process, I think you will probably have to reevaluate your epistemology.
All right. Well, I got to go. I appreciate it. I will look into that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us, mathematician.
Yeah, objects are real?
They're not real. No, the moon is not
objects
real.
are real. Welcome and thank you for joining us.
Thank you. First of all, I'm upset that you allowed mathematician on the chat, but yeah, all he has to do is Google the problems with pilot wave. I mean, right now it's pilot wave and mini worlds. Those things are, there's a lot of people getting behind mini worlds, and I think that's crazy. Bernardo Kastrup calls it a grotesque theory. idea. I do agree with T-Jump that, and this is also in line with what the great George Ellis, who with Stephen Hawking published in the 70s on black holes, said that uncertainty is just an ontological fact. It's just, there's no new technology that's going to make a quantum system certain. There's no new physics, there's nothing like that that's going to make that thing certain. It's just an ontological fact. That's what its category, and that's just how it's going to be. To try to reify that thing, to make it real, and that you have a particle in all locations at the same time, and it has a known location, that's just physical realism. And right now, it doesn't look like that's the case. But I think we should keep our minds open, but not so open that our brains fall out.
Do you have some kind of a deity that ties into all this?
Well, I mean, I think that Aristotelian or Platonic Aristotelian metaphysics, the idea of potency and act, I think, are appropriate for quantum mechanics. Measurement of a system is the act, and the quantum system is potency. That's what I think is a better view than trying to make it physically real.
Do you
Okay.
have any
well,
evidence?
If your name objects is real, I guess, is it safe to say you don't think there's any gods out there?
Of course, I mean, God. I mean, if there's anything real, it comes from being, right? And so, I certainly believe in God, but I believe objects are real if they're embodied, if they have qualities, if they're corporeal.
Why must it come from a being? Everything.
In
Well,
philosophy,
I don't-
being is
Yeah, go ahead.
synonymous with object. So it's not being
Sure,
doesn't mean
sure.
consciousness in philosophy. It's being is just a thing that exists.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, exactly. And I'm not an idealist or anything, but okay. Anyway, but thank you guys. I appreciate it.
Okay. So he was upset that we brought on a different guest. We try to bring up guests and talk with them. If you have some issue with it, it's best you just take it up with
Well, I
them.
wanted to ask about the act and potency. Why do you think that these abstract terms that describe something are actually existing things? Because that does not follow. Like I could say there is movement or something. Movement isn't an actual thing. Movement is an abstract term we use to describe an actual thing. And so if he thinks act and potency are actually existent, then he would need to explain how he got from them being just abstract terms to real existing objects.
Do you encounter other people making that claim as well?
Yes, there's lots of Thomists out there who make that claim.
Yeah, they usually have all the same answers, or does it vary?
It varies, but it goes along the lines of Thomism. It depends on how well they know Thomism.
How do you spell Thomism?
I think it's Thomism.
Oh, Thomism. Okay, I got it. I'm gonna look into that.
Taoism.
Taoism?
Taoism. Yeah, in Chinese, it's actually pronounced with a D instead of a T, but most people write it with a T because of an older style of translating that was not as good as the modern way. But it doesn't matter. It's the same thing.
It's a lie.
Yeah, if anybody would like to come up here, feel free to raise your hand.
Yeah, I guess we're coming to an early end here, which is probably okay. Did each of you have some final thoughts on the show today?
Yes, very specifically, I knew God didn't exist.
Definitely didn't show up today.
Indeed.
All right. T-Jump, any final thoughts? Although you just covered some stuff.
Potato.
I was wondering if that would come through. It's good to see Jefferson Spatchcock here today. He has some good perspectives to add as well. And so I just want to say thank you to everybody. I am saying thank you to everybody for joining us today in our YouTube audience as well as our Discord audience. We have a great appreciation for our sponsors, the Politics Discord, which provides this stage and audience and access and all this, which is wonderful. They've been great at hosting this consistently for us for quite a long time now. So if you need to get to them to subscribe, you want to join it, and you're listening to this in a later recording, the website address for that is www.discord.gg/politics. And then there's also the Canadian Atheists, that www.canadianatheists.ca, that takes care of the website and some other technical aspects. So anyway, we've had a little bit shorter than usual show today, which is okay, because usually we go on a lot longer. So I guess it's going to balance out somehow. Maybe entropy, laws of entropy are coming in, and equilibrium and all that. I don't know, but in the end, it's fine. If you want to find out more about our show, we are doing this on the first Sunday of every month, and you can see our whole schedule at www.theisthelpline.com. And also remember, T-Jump is running a Church of the Best Possible Worlds. It's an atheistic church that's doing things that it strives to do things that the other churches should be doing, and even promise they do, but don't. Did you want to elaborate a little bit on that, Tom Jump, before we close down?
Sure. So yeah, I'm trying to start a Church of the Best Possible World, an atheist church where we can do all the good things churches do, provide community, social events, meeting people for relationships, whatever, and all of the things that churches should be doing but aren't, like providing affordable housing, help doing your taxes, help for people with drug addiction and child care, and all the things that churches don't do or should be doing more of, because there are some that do it. And the start is hopefully to buy an apartment building to provide affordable housing, and then gain an income that we could build a church and use advertising to grow the church. And that would be really cool. But I need another 100,000 or so, hope probably, to do it. And so if you can support, that'd be great. If you know any billionaires, that would be great. If you happen to find any gold bricks lying on the ground, please send them my way. Donate apartment building, that'd be great.
Yeah, I was just thinking maybe somebody who wants to donate large sum of money could help with that. That'd be fantastic, because then it can help so many people. So thank you everybody for tuning in, and I guess Taco or Amy, is there any last thing you wanted to say before we close down?
Yeah. Oh, no, go.
That was it.
Just thank you as always, Randolph, Tom, Taco, and Jefferson Smashcock, and everybody. Yeah, we need to give alternatives to religion. I think these shows and all of the different channels out there and all of the different clubs that we have are great alternatives. So keep being awesome to each other, and thank you, Randolph and Taco, as always.
Appreciate it very much.
Thank you, everyone. Closing it out.